Hello guys, I hope everyone is doing great. This is Dr. T and welcome to Clinical Medicine with Dr. T. So guys, let's quickly talk about, it's not going to take us a long time. Let's quickly talk about fractures that go through a growth plate. Fractures that go through the physis, or fractures that involve the physis. So let's quickly just do a small anatomy review. So if this is our bone, this is our other bone. So basically, fractures that involve a physis or a growth plate, obviously those are childhood fractures. Why? Because adults do not have a growth plate. So the reason why these fractures that go through a growth plate are pediatric fractures is because adults do not have a growth plate. So basically, when you are an adult, your bones have fused. You are no longer growing. And these fractures, I'm sure as you can all now get the sense that we are going to talk about Salter-Harris classification. So these fractures in adulthood is usually those kiddies that it's usually during their growth spurt. During their growth spurt, the kiddies, the weakest part of the bone is the physis. The weakest part is the physis. The weakest part is the physis. And the kiddies, they play, they jump, they climb, so they are prone to fractures because of that. So boys, because they like climbing, running, they are more prone to fractures that go through a growth plate more than the girls. So let's just quickly talk about this. So this part of our bone, obviously this is what we're talking about. This is the physis, and the physis is found between the epiphysis and the metaphysis, right? So these structures, they are not really okay. Let me just first talk about the Salter-Harris classification. The Salter, there isn't much here, guys. There isn't much happening here. So we can't have, there is no adult that should come in with a fracture and when we start thinking about Salter-Harris, it's not possible. That fracture needs a different description. So what is important here, guys, is that if you have a fracture, this is your metaphysis and this is your epiphysis. A fracture that occurs here it doesn't involve the physis. A fracture that occurs here in any part going up or going down, that fracture doesn't involve the physis. So it cannot be Salter-Harris classified. So fractures that can be Salter-Harris classified are fractures that involve, it has to involve the physis. It's a must. Otherwise, it's not a Salter-Harris fracture. and cannot be Salter-Harris classified. Okay, so these fractures, you've got 1, you've got 2, you've got 3, and you've got 4. So the first fracture, let me just the first fracture is just a separation of the metaphysis from the epiphysis. So it's gonna appear as something like this. And remember, guys, these fractures can occur in the lower limbs and also in the upper limbs as well. The ones that affect the upper limbs are the most common ones. And you know, a lower limb, I'll show you now. A lower limb Salter. Let me just show it to you guys. When you've got a fracture of the lower limb, say this is our talus, this is the ankle neck, this is our tibia. So if this fracture is like this, you can be tempted and start to Weber classify this. You cannot Weber classify this fracture. It cannot be Weber classified because I know it's an ankle fracture, but look at the age of the patient. If they are still growing, then don't think about Weber. But if they are old, then you can start to think about, could it be a Weber? And what Weber is it? Can you Weber classify it or not? But the giveaway here is the age plus the fact that this is a joint, right? So think about that because it involves a joint. And so the giveaway here is the age. Look at the age of the patient, basically. Okay, so Salter 1 is just a separation of the metaphysis from the epiphysis. Remember, growth happens here. That's why it's called a growth plate. Growth happens here. And since growth happens here, this is the weakest part of the bone. The cells here are still going mitosis and all those things, so that the child can actually be tall and reach their potential. So yeah, and this is the time, you know, when it comes to joint fractures, this is the time when you actually have to do both limbs so that you can compare. I know that growth plates can throw a lot of people off because there are those that are so convincing that this is a fracture, and yet it's just a growth plate. Because if you suspect a growth, so if you suspect a fracture, do the other side and compare. Then the pattern that you looked at that made you to think that is a fracture, if it's not on the other side, then it's not a fracture. So a Salter-Harris one is just separation of the physis from the, so it actually goes through the growth plate, right? So, and the other issue is that the cells that are here, you cannot really see them on an X-ray. You cannot really see them on an X-ray. Unlike if you get a fracture here, it's gonna be obvious. You can easily see that there. But with these ones, it's hard. So it's just separation of the growth plate. So the presentation will be presentation is gonna be obviously someone who's still growing. So it's gonna be a child that was playing, and then the other fell or anything like that, and then now they've got pain and swelling around a joint. If it's not around the joint, then it's not a Salter-Harris. It has got to be around the joint. One thing that you need to really consider here when you've got a child who's got a pain around the joint is septic arthritis and osteomyelitis. Make sure that you're not missing that. But we're going to talk about that later on. Okay, so it's just separation. There's no displacement, there's no fragment, it's just separation. A very hard fracture to diagnose. It's a very hard fracture to diagnose. And then Salter-Harris 2, Salter-Harris 2, there is a separation, right? But the separation does not extend through the entire physis. Then the fracture line just goes up like that. That's a 2. Unlike a 1, L1 extends through the entire physis. But this one, somewhere, either halfway or just before it gets to the end, it goes up. That's a fracture line. Then with the 3, we have something like this. Again, your fracture is going through the physis, and then it decides to go down like that. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we've got this one. So you have a separation. For some reason, this one just goes like this. Or it can be this side, or it can be this side. So basically, this structure is a combination of 1 and 2. This one. You can either, let me do it this way. So you can either have this. So the most important thing here, you have got a fracture line that extends here. So it affects both the epiphysis and the physis. The 2 only affects, it goes through the plate, the growth plate, and then goes and enters the metaphysis. And then this one, it goes through 3, it goes through the physis and then enters through the epiphysis. But this one, it enters both of them. Then the last one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then Salter-Harris 5 is a fracture that goes like this. Once again, you've got your... Now the issue here is that you have a fracture that is here, but the problem is this structure is like a crushed kind of an injury. So you basically have this bone impacted on this other one, so they like impacted on each other. So that's a Salter-Harris 5. There is a way to remember these classifications. So S is separation, right? So there's just separation of the 2 bones. And then 2, that's S2, is above. So the fracture line goes above, like we said here. So we can say it goes above, and it goes through the physis. As it goes and as it continues to break the physis, it goes above, doesn't continue with the physial line. So it goes up, so that's above. And then this one, this is above, and then this is below. The L is below, so it goes below. This is Salter-Harris separation, which is an S. Just separation above, below, and then you've got this one, which affects it can either, I was gonna draw the second possibility here. So the second possibility here is your fracture line can go like this. You can just fracture this side. If the fracture can go on, can be like that. So yeah, and then you've got the crash. Your ER will be your crash. So you crash the fracture. Crushed. So your R there. So let's do it this way. Crushed. So there's an impaction there on that one. So yeah, guys, we are gonna talk about. Let me just take a shower to work now. Let me take a shower and go to work. We're gonna do part 2 of the Salter Harris classification. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.